earlier y'all were talking about strategic racism, and I personally had an issue with, I guess, how it's stated, where they don't actually start at the lower systems in terms of human to human dynamics as opposed to the actual governmental and business structures.
Okay,
like,
so
let's take for
just so
example,
you guys know, this is from our interview in the first hour.
yeah. So were y'all switching over to a different topic, or is it okay to talk about?
Brandon and Matt were not around for that. What's your name, by the way? Where are you calling from?
Oh, Robert from Louisiana.
Robert from Louisiana. Okay.
Yeah. So what is it? What would be, I guess, what would be a better if they weren't around for that topic?
No, that's fine. You could go ahead. No,
I just wanted them to know that was more for them, so they knew what you were talking about.
Okay. Well, I have a personal issue with basically I'll just go with the natural argument. In nature, individuals of a kind, of a species, of a like, have to stick together. And a lot of the, I guess, liberal talking points that I hear, because I see myself as more of a centrist, they focus on trying to be like the shepherd that leaves the flock to go find the lost lamb. Personally, in my life, I look at subsidization of bigger and smaller systems as the same thing, and its applications in terms of restrictions. So I'll explain it like this. I personally had a cousin who was on welfare, food stamps, all of that good stuff. She irresponsibly had 8 to 9 children out of wedlock. One of those children actually became a killer and was a hitman. And another one of them is working towards going to college. There were no major, I guess, restrictions that were placed on her in terms of making sure kids had to have certain grades, making sure a certain amount of food was in the fridge, that kind of stuff. I can understand where a lot of Republicans or conservatives come from in terms of, look, you want the government to place restrictions on the free market subsidizations you give big businesses. Liberals want a lot of, I guess, pocket watching in terms of the bigger businesses, but they also won't do that on a micro level because all of this starts at the personal level. Wait, I can't hear you. Did you?
We do that on a micro level. Our guest yesterday was a researcher who looked at the enforcement of welfare and the criminalization of welfare recipients, which we do on a micro level fairly aggressively. And it is pointless. And it is more, just from a pure dollars and cents perspective, it does not save the government money if that's your primary interest.
Well, no, and it's not about necessarily the saving of money. I'm personally a depopulationist. I think that life has value, and it has as much value. Excuse me, sorry. It has as much value as you give it. The average individual.
What does that mean?
Honestly, wait, what'd you say?
What is life has value and it has value?
You give it yourself?
No. I mean, in applications of people as a larger system. I'll put it to you. Let's go to a historical argument.
You're losing us, man. You got to.
Naturalization Act in 1790. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
What about 1790? Okay, yeah. I'm sorry, though.
Yeah, no, you got to really simplify this argument because we don't know what these terms you're throwing out. Like, what's your argument?
Okay, my argument is that why is it that individuals, or more so liberal individuals, place so much effort on attempting to, I guess, restrict free market, but allow or want liberal talking points on a personal level? Because these things work in tandem.
What do you mean allow at a smaller level points on the personal level? And for the record, progressives don't want to limit free markets. Markets are in this country and in capitalism internationally at this point in our history based on coercion of labor that is not proportionate to the amount of money that people are making on top.
I think I understand what he's arguing here. Are you asking why liberals or people left of center are for regulating, corporations, big business, but are for not regulating individuals on their use of welfare? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but also with the added of the use of welfare, like a responsibility to the responsibility to create life responsibly.
Okay, so this seems like a little personal, right? This is you referenced the responsibility to creating life. You're saying should be restricted by the government, because that sounds like big government to me, and that's not something progressives are in favor of.
No. I'm not talking about like forced sterilization, like what has been done to
You're talking about China's
African American
like
women.
a child policy.
No. I'm not talking about the actual state applying it. I'm talking about why do you think
to people if they have too many kids?
Yeah, and cannot economically afford it.
But here's what do we do to those children? Like if you're advocating that, if someone's not responsibly using their welfare in the way that you think liberals should regulate the use of welfare or whatever, and I know you gave your specific example from your personal experience, but what do you suggest happens to those children just because you, in your opinion, think the parents are using that welfare money irresponsibly? Those children should just starve and die? I don't get what you think should be done. Like, what is the answer to this? Like, what are you advocating for here? Like, what is your end game here?
Okay. In Louisiana, we have Louisiana workforce hire. It's literally a website where you can apply for different jobs. However, why isn't there a governmental system, like specifically that goes to every elementary, middle, high school that pushes certain career paths or trades? Why don't?
No. Hold on. Stay on the point from before, though. You're advocating.
No. This is.
No.
Okay, and this is. I'm sorry because it's very difficult. I need to try and restrict this argument to a very niche thing.
Okay, so
we need to take people who are here.
Let's talk about what you said earlier about you believe that the government, the state, should be restricting welfare and assistance to families if a woman, in your estimation, irresponsibly has more children than she can afford. One, how about if a woman, in your estimation, I'm using your words, responsibly has children, later loses her job and becomes poor? You're saying that she should not be able to access that money because she has too many children, or you're saying there should be an exception. How do you apply that exception? I mean, and additionally,
home ownership. Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me jump in here. Okay, this is the real problem: is you have a classist and probably racist viewing of what welfare is. Because guess what? Those people who have homes, they get a big mortgage deduction every single year. So what are we going to do?
No, not mortgage. That's not owning a home. Like black people call, because as a black person, we call, if you rent an apartment, it's renting. And white folks, if they get a mortgage, it's also renting because you don't own it until after the entire thing is owned. I mean, if you had a couple get together, right? A man and a woman get together, or a man and a man, a woman and a woman got together and purchased a small home for, let's say, $20,000 to $25,000. And then they have their own piece of land that they own.
Where can you buy a home for $20,000 to $25,000? Please, I want to move there. Right? $20,000 to $25,000 in Louisiana? I don't know where. Yeah. I think
all over the place, literally in almost every parish.
All right. I
don't want to get. I really just want to hammer down this point about what people deserve in terms of welfare. So, do you believe that children are responsible for their parents' choices? I'm just speaking your language.
No.
If you believe poverty is a choice, which you okay.
No, children do not choose to be impoverished. Their parents choose to be irresponsible by not having adequate home ownership for
Okay,
proper financial.
It's not a choice.
If you're poor,
but using your argument,
I have kids.
But the welfare is for children so they do not starve. So you're still advocating for limiting welfare payments to a family that has children. Who's going to bear the brunt of that money not coming in?
I understand what you're saying. You are correct. And if we're going to attempt to be extremely restrictive on big business, because let's say here in Louisiana, we have literally over a couple $2 billion where major corporations receive subsidies for oil and gas, yet oil and gas prices are still high. But also individuals, because everybody's bargaining power comes from the strength of either their numbers or their financial responsibility. If someone chooses to be irresponsible in terms of me right now, I consider myself broke. I know that if I choose to have kids right now, I would be economically irresponsible. It would not be fair to the child that I would have to, subject them to that poverty.
I mean, I think what you're basically advocating for, though, is that the child having children would just become a luxury for the rich. Like, how many people? No, not the rich. The financially responsible. You were never financially responsible for. No, I could tell you as a father of 2 children that the financial responsibility of having children never comes. If I waited for myself to feel financially responsible to have children, I would probably never have children in my life, because there is always something that will happen. There is always some. You could get yourself in a financially responsible spot, for a middle-class person.
Okay.
Have a child.
Okay.
Something goes wrong with the pregnancy. Tons of money that your insurance won't cover. All of a sudden, all that responsibility that you came up with, all that financial responsibility you came up with, out the window. You still have the kid coming into the world, all hundreds of thousands of dollars spent to have this kid come into the world safely after some sort of complication. I mean, and this is just one scenario I'm using. The idea that, and I hear from a lot of people who say this, and it's really depressing. I haven't had kids because of financial reasons. You will never, and I can tell you this from experience myself. You bring up personal experience. I'm bringing up personal experience. You will never feel financially responsible for a child unless you're rich. There's too many expenses that could come up that you just can't plan for, even the ones you can plan for.
I'm sorry. That feels like a non-starter argument to me, because, and I'll put it to you like this. If in your instance, like you said, as a father of 2, if you, because I'm a proponent of Medicare for all, but we have to understand that spending comes into it in terms of fluctuations in populations. If you own your own home, you have a certain amount of savings, let's say $10,000 saved, then if you were to befall some medical emergency, some medical issue, when it comes to welfare, food stamps, those forms of subsidies, it's not worried about, okay, well, if you own your home. So we know at the end of the day, as long as you can pay property.
In this call,
we do have to jump. Why don't you should call into my show. I would love to continue having this conversation. Check me out, youtube.com/Matt Binder. This has gone into more of a, take care. Bye. I'm sorry, this went into
No, not a second.
Just to jump in quickly, ultimately, I think I kind of got the gist of what he was saying in the beginning, but then he kind of just became an example of kind of what the problem is, which is that he's asking, why is there this divide between, I guess, the fiscally conservative and socially liberal, liberals who want to tax big business, but don't want personal responsibility. And the answer is quite simple, is because they have conservative ideology generally. Their ideology is not very what we would identify as recognizably left. So the question of why don't we have a system that, why aren't they arguing for systems that punish parents for having kids, and then, that externality of the kids having to eat, why don't we force that upon them? The question, well, because some people have an ideology that would view that as being, regressive, would view that as being, inhumane, would view that as being immoral. Liberal ideology, I think, is inconsistent in a way that leads people to wonder, how can you promote X that kills all these people, but then have all these Y and Z issues? And that's not really a question that's the answer to that question, in my opinion, is because neoliberalism and neoconservatism is hegemonic. So a lot of people call themselves liberal, but have incredibly regressive and conservative views about, what it means to be responsible, what it means to, have a morally just society. That rehabilitation inherently, includes punishment. So like the question of like, how do we fix these problems really become like, how do we punish the right people? And so I think the caller kind of illustrates that a lot of people are caught in that dynamic of thinking. But, the answer is, we don't ask liberals to be more conservative in their social policy. We highlight the contradictions that exist between like their social and fiscal policy and point out that you can't be socially liberal and fiscally conservative. You just end up being both conservative, and they are, and, we offer them an alternative.
I don't even think this caller was arguing that, though. That was so confusing, because when we brought up like, money spent, he even specifically said like, I don't care about the money spent. It was just like almost a way of just like he wanted to punish people without anything behind it. Like it was.
I think that we have a very punitive society, and that defines a lot of how we operate, not just in the legal system, but in the financial system. And I think a lot of people identify themselves, maybe the caller included, as a liberal, but they are conservative in one of, in the ways that really.
Centrist.
Yeah, and it is depressing how quickly those sorts of ideologies move towards having a very attentive eye on population numbers.
Well, that's what he said at the beginning. Depopulationist. Okay, I mean, let's just, we got to read some IMs and get out of here.
Right, folks, there's more of what you've just saw where that came from. That's if you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you. Really, thank you.